Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's monthly show. Um, we should have an interesting, we're going to have a little bit of a freewheeling conversation tonight. There's a lot to be talking, a lot that we can be talking about and will be. Uh, there's a lot of interest in pilot sightings of UFOs or UAPs, of whatever you want to call them these days. And we have, of course, right now we have one pilot on with us, and that's Bruce Pearson. And we may have more joining us. And if that's the case, we'll probably touch on that. It won't be necessarily the entire program, but we'll get into this as well as other topics. So welcome everybody. I see we have a number of folks joining. Bruce Cornett is with us. Bruce Cornett is an author. He has a book, and he's done a lot of interesting scientific work up at Pine Bush, up in New York. For you, those of you that may have followed those activities, Bruce has a wealth of knowledge about it. Bruce Pearson, of course, Bruce also has a wealth of knowledge about a number of different things. And we're looking at a lot of activities that took place that may not be that well known, such as down in New Mexico. Maybe Bruce will touch on that in a little bit. Uh, let's see, is Bruce, did he drop? Yeah, Bruce, you're there, right?
Pearson?
Yes, Bruce Pearson.
No,
Okay.
he's still looking for his image in the mirror.
No, for some reason I went on mute, and then I got a call from my sister in Alaska.
Okay.
So that's fine. But I'm here now. Yes, I'm sorry, Joe. What was your question again?
Okay. I was going to say, I want to talk a little bit about some of the sightings that pilots have had, or some of the interesting sidebar type of sightings that maybe didn't get a lot of play over the years, but have a significant impact on the topic of UAPs. And I think they are falling into line with what we're seeing today in various places. Of course, the drones, if you're here in the Northeast, we had the drone situation over an 18-month period. We also had a lot of activity around nuclear power plants here in New Jersey, as well as other sites. And of course, we have some of the mysterious happenings that have been documented. Again, maybe not as widely known as some others, but we'll be touching base on some of these things. Matter of fact, what I'd like to do right now, let's start with Bruce Pearson. I know Bruce has had a tough day, but I'm going to put him on the spot here and let him talk about the activity down in New Mexico that he was involved with and that he has some interesting direct knowledge of. Bruce, why don't you jump in there?
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, it's like so many of the events that we've talked about. I mean, it was a very well documented event. I was there for both nights. There is corroborating uh, documentation from the as it pertains to the first night, which was in a book by Larry Fawcett, and I'll bring up a picture of that if I can find it. I have a and it was from a Freedom of Information Act document to the National Military Command Center in Washington, which outlined in detail the report. Um, so this was in January of, I guess, 77. There's one thing I wonder if I may stray as I usually do. It occurred to me during the week as I sat in my living room, a very close friend of mine, which typically has now died, by the name of Dick Anderson. And we were very close friends for 25 years, was a fighter pilot in the 70s and flew F-15s out of Luke Air Force Base. I met Dick doing real estate. I had a real estate license for about 14 years part time, and we got to be very good friends. But told me a story, which actually got him transferred out of. He voluntarily transferred out of the Air Wing there at Luke Air Force Base and went into. Joe, you would be interested. Went into the anti-aircraft missile batteries as a captain because he was so disenchanted by what happened after this event. Him and his wingmen were at an area, I believe, north of Luke in northern Arizona, and they had just completed a run of simulated attack run or escort or something. Anyway, they came around this mesa, he said, and there was this tubular, he said it looked like a concrete pipe with a bunch of smaller discs around it. And he said it was so low and so large, hundreds and hundreds of feet long, rounded ends. It had slots in it, I believe. Anyway, the long and the short of it is him and his wingmen took off full afterburners and went back to Luke. They reported they had unidentified objects over the military zone. The radar folks down at Luke said we don't have anything showing, so they were debriefed afterwards. Anyway, the long and the short of all this, what I do have is he was very good friends. As a matter of fact, I think they rented a house together. A guy that was in, he was one of the spooks for the Air Force. And they had them describe what they saw, both of them independently, as they normally do. And the guy did a pen and ink drawing or a drawing of it. He gave, in violation of all kinds of regulations, he gave Dick a small copy of this drawing based on his description. And Dick, many years before he died about 5 years ago now, gave me a copy of it. I have it sitting on my coffee table. So I will take a picture of it and send it to you. Unfortunately, I don't know how we're ever going to follow up on that because he is deceased. And of course, nothing's going to be in the records on that. But I have the actual picture of it. And it just is pretty amazing. It is not dissimilar to what the Japan Airlines captain saw with his flight crew on that 747 cargo aircraft over the Northwest Territories on their way to Anchorage, which was verified on air traffic control, both civilian and military. Just wanted to mention that. We should revisit that. All right, back to New Mexico. I was involved getting my licenses and involved with the Civil Air Patrol as an Army ROTC. They didn't need any helicopter pilots, which is what I really wanted to do. So I was working on my fixed wing. I joined the Civil Air Patrol Clovis Composite Squadron at Cannon Air Force Base. So I spent a lot of time out there. I also was working overnight radio at the only 100,000 watt FM station in the nation at that time in Clovis, KMTY. I got to, because I took, contrary to station procedures, I took requests on the QT. And so all the guys working the flight line on, up in the tower were calling. It was a country station. And we had a lot of concerts that this guy produced it on the station. So I knew a lot of the guys because over a period of a year or two, every Friday and Saturday night, they would call. So that's the story. Spent a lot of time out there, got to be friends with the wing commander because we interacted with, we had a little hangar space over there in the maintenance hangar. We had two 172s, a 150, and they were all CAP planes. The night in question was very strange. I had got my second degree in Denver and came back to Eastern with a first class license because we were a 100,000 watt station. I was on all the other stations in the nation were limited to 50,000 watts because of the propagation characteristics of FM. It doesn't bounce off the ionosphere as does AM. So this was a test case to see if they could push the envelope of FM stations beyond the nominal 50 and sometimes 100-mile limit, no matter how big the stick was, the antenna. So there's a lot of testing going on. And we had been getting reports from Southern California, Fresno areas. We had people calling in on the call-in line saying, "Hey, I'm listening to your station. Can you play me a song?" Well, that's 1,200 miles away. That couldn't be, but it was. So the FCC. Yeah, well, they were interested in it because we had a couple. They had Raytheon, they had RSI, they had people interested in, for military reasons, I'm sure. How could we use FM? And this what later on went into AM single sideband that RCA put up for the radio system or the phone system in Alaska. There was a lot of high tech stuff. So anyway, because I had a first phone, they came. I got a call from the station owner, said, "Hey, put your shift on automation. Head out to the transmitter, which is about 10 miles outside of town. I could show you some diagrams of where it was, and sit out there because the FCC is coming in with what they call a proof truck, which was all kinds of stuff, antenna loads and all kinds of electronic measuring equipment on a straight job to do some testing." So I sat out there. I said, "Stay by the phone." I was in the middle of nowhere, in a cattle field, in the middle of the night. At midnight, they went on, and they'd call me on the phone in the transmitter building and say, "Run it up to 110% power, run it down to 50% power." And so I sat there. About an hour into it, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from the kid that's at the station who he was basically cleaning up. He was copying new spots that came in because we were using carts at that time. And he called me and goes, "Hey, what's going on over Cannon Ice?" He said, "Are you watching?" So, "Well, I'm sitting in my truck freezing my butt off here, but yeah, what?" He says, "We're getting all kinds of calls." He said, there's something going on over Cannon." So as I looked over there, sure enough, there's 6 or 8 of these UFOs were circling around doing this light show. I said, "Holy smoke." He says, "Yeah, the board's light up like a Christmas tree and everybody's calling and, wanting to know what's going on." So that was the basis of why I ended up being out there in the middle of a field outside of Clovis at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning. They were around for a couple hours, and it was, what do you say? I used to carry a little Instamatic, in my glove box. I didn't have one, and then after that, I had gotten a job as a stringer for Associated Press, and so they gave me a 35 millimeter camera. So the next day, I checked around. I talked to the wing commander, and he wouldn't say anything, but apparently, and they did scramble the F-111s. That was an F-111 base, and I watched them take off, and that was a joke. They were just basically, you could see the afterburners and hear them. They were not that far away, 10 or 12 miles, but they would creep along in the sky, and these things would dart over 30 miles away in the other quadrant instantly, almost. So it was just like every other sighting that we've heard of from people that have watched this type of event. They would circle around this central craft in a circle, like ring around the rosy, like the May Day parade. They would follow in formation to the extent that you could see them, but it was almost instantaneous. It wasn't like they left and moved to another quadrant of the sky. They would hover. They would come up and just stop and hover for 15 minutes and just hang there, drop down low to the ground. And when they left, they just went straight up, like somebody sucked them up in a vacuum cleaner and disappeared. So that the next day, I got my camera and my 400 millimeter lens and a tripod, and a guy from the Clovis News Tribune, Scotty Price. We got permission to go on the Hotel Clovis, which, other than the grain elevators, was the tallest building in Clovis. And 10 o'clock at night, I called Mick Landreth, the owner. I said, I need the night off after what happened last night. He said, "That's fine. The proof is over." So I took the next night off, and we went up there. I had all the 1600 speed black and white film I could find. And sure enough, they were there the second night. And it was very hard to try with a long lens in the middle of the night to try to get pictures. I must have run 20 rolls of 24. Processed them. I got a couple decent pictures, but they were on a black background. So really didn't, it just looked like every other phony UFO picture, except they did show what I was able to perceive through the camera lens, that they did have like a rough pewter surface on them. They looked like that color of, pewter mug from the Revolutionary War, that gray silver look. But it didn't look like it was highly polished or anything. It didn't look like it was, chrome. Um, so there was a lot of press and media, but most of it was skeptical. And of course, the Air Force poo-pooed all of it. But here's the interesting point of it, because I knew the guys that were in main duty, and I knew the wing commander very well. And off the record, he said, "Look, we didn't scramble those F-11s because we didn't have anything to do. And that's a fighter bomber. It's not all that fast." He said, "We're not the fastest thing in the sky, but they put us to shame and made us look like we were backing up." And he said, "I'll be filling out paperwork till the cows come home." So he said, "Don't think I was interested in this." But he said the thing that really got their attention was it shut down all the electric in the tower and on the flight line. The diesel trucks kept running. If you know how diesel works, it doesn't require electric ignition. Diesel truck, any diesel engine will run until you shut the fuel supply off. They don't have spark plugs, and they have glow plugs to get them started. So he said that really flipped out the security people. So I'm on board with Washington talking about it, but we didn't have this discussion. I'll deny I ever spoke to you. About 2 weeks later, they brought down these huge light towers from a SAC base up in North Dakota or Minnesota and put them on the flight line. And when I was out there now it's been about at least 10 years ago. It was in 97, it was 20 years ago, for an alumni award. They were still on the flight line lit, and you could see Cannon Air Force Base from 30 miles away with these stupid light towers. So they were pretty well swooped about it. Go ahead. You can ask any questions.
Okay, why don't we do the? Well, first of all, I've gotten very interested in New Mexico over the past couple of days. I was rereading Bill Burns' book, Day After Roswell, with the interview with Colonel Corso. And there's a lot of interesting things that have taken place there over the years, a lot of mysterious things relating to what did or did not happen at Roswell. And so I think it's an interesting area to study. Um, I'm going to open it up right now. Let anybody who have a question for Bruce about the sighting that he just relayed, or if you like to put any amplifying information out there, that would be fine as well. But before you do that, I want to say hi to a couple of folks that joined, Beth Esch and also Mindy Gerber. Hi, ladies. Okay. Okay, so why don't we open up? Who has any questions for Bruce?
Well, just a year that this took place, your sighting.
Bruce, you have to unmute. Nope,
Not yet.
you're muted, Bruce.
Yeah, he says he knows. He's trying to find the right button.
Okay, in the meantime, um, who had the question for Bruce? Oh, Bruce, you had the question for Bruce.
Yeah.
Okay, hold it, and I'm going to ask and see if anybody else has anything. Anybody else like to make a comment or ask a question, or talk about anything for that matter? Beth, Mindy, Gloria.
I've been following a lot of Antarctica. There's some information, it's just like all the time something new about Antarctica is coming up. I don't know if anybody else is learning what's going on in Antarctica, but that seems to be a major focus.
A lot of interesting stories coming out of there. Very hard to get any confirmation, though. It seems like they have the continent pretty well locked down as far as information, which is an interesting aspect of it in itself. You have to ask the question why. What have they found there? What is the lurking beneath the thousands of feet of ice? That we're not aware of. Good question, Mindy. We'll see if we can get an answer to that. How about you, Beth? You got any comments or questions?
Anything happening in Jersey lately?
Yeah, actually, there is.
Since I'm not there.
Probably they waited for you to move out of town, and then they're hanging out at your old house. That's what it is. Okay, how about you, Gloria? What do you got?
No, nothing in particular this
Nothing
time.
in particular? Okay. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or, start jumping up and down in front of your camera. I'll catch it. Okay. All right. Back to Bruce Cornett. Bruce Pearson, have you got your mic on?
No, he still has his mic off.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, Joe,
Okay,
what
Bruce is
is it
coming back.
about New Jersey?
I'm sorry?
She had asked you about New Jersey, and you said there was a lot going on, but you didn't say what.
Well, it all depends. First of all, we were basically ground zero, pretty much in Monmouth and Ocean County, over the past 12 to 18 months for all the drone activity. And of course, drones and UFOs are almost synonymous at times. I'm going to say that my gut feeling tells me that most of them were being developed, they're developmental projects because the United States, when you look at drone technology and what's going on in Ukraine, we're probably a couple miles behind everybody else in the development of the doctrine and the technology itself. So I think a lot of that fell into that basket. Now, with that being said, I only saw one instance myself, and that was back in December. And it was coming from a Christmas dinner, and we were going through Farmingdale, which is a small farming town in Monmouth County. And all of a sudden, we looked, and directly in our windshield was four lights. It was blue, two red, and a white. And they were flying. It was not a configuration that would be a navigation configuration for any aircraft that I'm aware of. But anyway, when we made a right-hand turn, now the object is out the passenger window, and it was directly over the town of Farmingdale. And at that point, it actually dropped something. It was a bright white light that dropped for about 100 feet, then winked out. Now, I don't know what it was, but my guess is it was still part of some drone developmental effort. And they dropped something that may have been testing release mechanisms for explosives like they're doing in Ukraine. Other than that, though, there's also was a lot of activity over one of our nuclear power plants that's been shut down for a while. And that was going on for about 18 months as well. I have a lot of pictures. I have about 60 or 70 pictures that were provided to me by somebody that I worked with. It was her son and his daughter that actually took most of these. They live right outside the gate of the Forked River nuclear power plant. So that's where they're seeing all these things. Those, I believe, might be more than just drones. Okay, so anyway, that's just some of it. There's other things going on as well. Gloria, does that give you a little bit of a focus there?
Yes.
Okay.
Ever have an incident with a disappearing boat?
A disappearing boat. You mean like the Philadelphia experiment?
I don't know what that is.
That's where they were testing out one of Einstein's theories.
Right,
And,
the invisible boat.
I think what they were doing, they were developing a degaussing mechanism so that metal ships are magnetic, and they were setting off magnetic mines during World War II. So they started degaussing, and they degauss ships to this day to neutralize the magnetic effect of steel hulls. Now, as far as ships disappear all the time in all the oceans of the world. When I was in, we had an active track of about 76,000 ships, and they participated in something that there was an emergency rescue coordination effort that was computerized that the Coast Guard was championing since the 1950s. Now the report of ships being lost, of course, in the Bermuda Triangle or the Devil's Triangle, Devil's Sea in Japan. There's like 6 areas that fall into the category of a mysterious place where ships disappear. Statistically, sometimes it's appropriate. Other times, sometimes the statistics don't bear it out. But ships do disappear all the time.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons. I don't know if
I've
that
had an experience, but it was a boat.
A small boat?
a small boat.
Well, that same thing. There's accidents that happen all the time there too.
But it was like it was
I'm not aware of anything myself.
okay.
But where did it disappear? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, me and my husband were. I live on the ocean in Monmouth County, and we were out. We took a walk down to the beach, and I saw this boat. It looked strange. It looked different than most boats, and especially the interior. The lighting in the interior was like weird, and so we were looking at it, and then it looked like, but I couldn't tell for sure that another boat might have approached it, and then there was like a light, and then it disappeared.
What town was this in?
Elbron?
Okay. All right. Well, off the Jersey coast, that's another thing. You will see things, and it's been that way since probably at least the 1950s. Could be bright yellow objects looking like lemons, or it could be flights of red-orange orbs off of Long Branch. Just a couple of years ago, there was a whole flight of them there. So, as far as the boats, something having interaction with small boats, anything's possible. Could even be something like pirates. Okay, I mean piracy takes place as well. So,
But it just wasn't there anymore.
like I
Okay.
said, was there ever anything in the newspaper about a boat disappearing? Or
Not that I know of.
okay, that's the
But
other thing. Yeah, not everything gets reported. So,
yeah,
good
it was
good
really
question, though.
strange. If I had been by myself, I would have thought I was hallucinating, but my husband was with me.
Okay, write it up. Write it up. We can always send it off to the police. I saw a plane crash off of Sandy Hook a number of years ago, and I thought that it would be reported, and I thought that they would have all types of records of it right there, even the major Coast Guard installation. Nobody knew anything about it, and they found the wreckage though 7 miles away from where it actually crashed, which is right off the fishing beach. That happens. It was the middle of the day during the summer. Figure thousands of people out at the beach. Somebody's going to report it. It only got one half of a paragraph in the New York Times. So, anyway, that's just the nature of the animal. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of mysterious things out there. Also, I think Bruce Cornett had a question for you. Go ahead, Bruce. Wake up.
Well, who was it that was talking about the strange aircraft lights? Was that Gloria?
No, the aircraft lights. I saw a drone, and it was a drone that was flying over Farmingdale.
Okay,
I know what it
because-
was. I'm pretty sure I know what it was because they were having a lot of drone flights, and everybody was saying, "Don't worry about it. We know about it." The president said that. Congress said that. So it's
So
probably DOD.
you've noticed strange
developmental.
things, Joe,
Pardon
in
me?
the area where you live. You've noticed strange things over the years. But my wife and I were driving west of Red Bag. I believe it is on 520, and going, in the Cold Snack area, and we noticed what appeared to be a small plane above us that was following us or staying directly ahead of us. And it had navigation lights on it. It was at night. But what uh, really raised a problem for us is as we were driving along, it stops in midair and reverses direction.
Maybe a helicopter?
No, made no noise.
So it was
It had,
going backwards?
yeah, it went backwards.
Where was it in relationship to the Navy Road?
Yeah.
Very much south. I mean, it was as 520, which is what Newman Springs
Road. Right.
Right.
Okay. Well, actually, I was coming from a funeral or a wake up in New Brunswick, and for Tim Beckley. And I was coming back 18 and I got onto 520 heading back towards my house. And right in front of the main entrance to Brookdale Community College, I'm looking in front of me and there's a cluster of multicolored lights with no discernible shape, but they were moving at a high rate of speed. And interestingly, they were pretty much over the Navy Road and they were heading in a southerly direction, which would have taken them to the ammunition depot storage facility. That was okay. That must have been Tim. Tim passed away 22, I think. And I have the exact date and everything like that, but it was multicolored, blues, whites, red. There were at least 13 different color lights, and they were all clustered, but they were flying at a fairly high rate of speed, probably the speed of a high-speed single-engine, private plane, maybe 140 miles per hour. So, but that's in the Colts Neck area, and that definitely was something strange. But it also fell into the model of all of the things that have been taking place since 1958 along that Navy Road. I mean, there's all types of activity there. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but okay.
Well,
What else?
all
What
right,
else
you
we got?
noticed something unusual, and I'm just reporting that I've noticed something unusual. Plus, there was another event that happened in August of, when was this? 2003. I was I was on, was it 95, and passing some of the military bases, the Air Force bases there. And what was really bizarre is that along comes this, what appears to be a single engine airplane. It was below the top of the trees along the shoulder of the highway. And it had struts underneath the wings like you would from a 1920 or 1930s airplane. But it had no propeller movement up front. And it had no wheels on it whatsoever. And yet it was just flying right along the side of the road, and it didn't look like any type of patrol airplane that was monitoring the traffic, because it was, first off, much too low in altitude and just staying on the shoulder of the road.
Okay, very, very interesting. That again, strange things around here don't really jump out and grab me anymore because there's been so many over the years. There was a gentleman from Little Silver. He was an engineer, and he was also involved with Situ, which was the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained. And he was the local investigator. He told me before he died a number of various things that took place. Again, from the Navy Pier and on Raritan Bay all the way south to the ammunition storage depot itself, and all the activity in between, including red orbs, a number of those. Those I also saw back in 2015 flying over Keyport in a single file formation. So they're out there. I mean, all you have to do is keep your head up, look up, and you will probably see something. Even down in Tennessee, right, Beth?
I haven't seen much, but then again, I'm not really out at night, like looking up. So
Maybe you have to start doing that.
I know.
Okay, so what about you, Mindy? What do you got?
Joe, wasn't there something about somebody seeing a submarine off of what was it, North Carolina recently?
Oh, well, the submarines are all over the place. You can see them right here in New York Harbor. Matter of fact, I was out on a fishing boat one night. We were coming back in. It was about 9:30 at night, and the skipper of the charter boat that we were on, he said, if you look real hard, you'll see this mast configuration lights coming out of the harbor entrance. And he said, that's a nuclear submarine. And they always wait until after dark so they can sneak back out to sea because the Russian submarines are right off shore. They wait for our subs to come out, just like we wait off their bases, waiting for their subs to come out. Then we track them, and they play nasty games with one another. They collide from time to time, and sometimes even a sub might get sunk. Okay, a little story about sinking submarines. It's not really a UFO related, but it's still a fascinating story in of itself. In 1968, it was a bad year to be a submariner. 4 submarines were lost in that year. There was an American submarine, the Scorpion. There was the Russian submarine, the infamous. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. That was Bruce. Oh, is he waiting to get back in?
Apparently.
Okay, there we go. Are you with us, Bruce?
Yeah, he's got his tripod in back.
Okay. What was the problem?
I have no idea. I've never seen. I did 700 meetings a year. You know, I do this stuff 5 days a week. It would not allow, when I went to pull up some screen sharing, the meeting disappeared. I could hear you. I had no controls. I had no screen. I had nothing. So when I went out of it back in. So I apologize to everyone. What I was trying to do is show you some documentation from this event, which I'll try it again. Let's see here. There's something screwed up with this app, and it has to do with Apple computers as usual because Microsoft hates Apple. So never had this happen before. But now I went to pull up another screen, and the Zoom meeting went away. So I can hear you, but I can't access the.
Okay.
Yeah, I just.
What is it?
Now I got it back. All right, so maybe it's okay now. I want to show you guys, you folks, something here, which adds a little bit of credibility to my story. If I can pull it up, so I'll just re-find it again.
We're back to New Mexico, everybody.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
No problem.
I'm ready to throw this thing out the window, but I don't think it's my tower. I think it's our friends at Microsoft and deal with this with Teams all the time. Bruce, you had asked when it was. It was back in January '76, my second year.
76. Okay.
So I'm going to try to share a screen with you if I can get this back. And Joe had asked me to bring up to just find some documentation, some news articles, and so forth to substantiate it. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can, because I'm running off of one screen, which makes it more difficult. So I referred to the National UFO Reporting Center document. Let's see if I can find this. If it comes
Okay,
up.
I saw you winked. Looks
Here
like
we
you're
go.
coming. Okay, there it is.
All right, so this is the actual memo that went out, and you can see it was the 21st. And it discusses them briefly. But this came from FOIA. Greenwood and Fawcett wrote that book. I have a copy of it, and I'll get you. It's a paper trail of all FOIA released documents. So the interesting thing that puts credibility to this and puts it in the realm of spook world is I didn't go public with this because there was a million other people being interviewed. I was working at Channel 3 at the same time and at Channel 12. Channel 3, the PBS station, and Channel 12 was CBS affiliate, a satellite from KFDW in Amarillo. We were KFDA, or we were KFDW. KFDA was the parent station. So we went out the second night, took all the pictures, I processed them, I got a couple that were good. I was on doing a show out in Frisco 10 years later. Go to Barnes and Noble, pick up a book, read it on the flight back. That's what I normally do. Puts me to sleep in 3 minutes. But this book was Fawcett and Greenwood's book, and I happened to turn to a page, and it was this page, but there was a lot of background before it. And I'm like, holy smoke. So I had taken the photos that I printed at Channel 3, and I always used to write, it was what I was taught early on photos. I wrote in pencil in the back everything I could about the photo. Who took it, date, place, the type of film, speed of film, a 1600 ASA, black and white, monofilm, lens, atmospheric conditions, and a little background. Wrote in pencil so I didn't destroy the put it away. It made it through the floods and fires and throwing stuff out. And I had framed it. I had it in our library. And when I got back the next day on that flight, I was on a red eye. I pulled it out and I called my two sons into our library there in Clinton at the house. And I said, I want you to read this document that I'm showing you now. And I said, then I want you to pull this picture that I'm going to show you out of the frame and turn it over. And Doug, my oldest, who works in television, goes, geez, Dad, this is the same time and date and place. I said, yeah, I was there. And I personally took that picture and printed it. So I had a few folks, and Joe, forgive me if I'm going too long-winded on this, but I think that one of the creepy things about this is the backside of the story, and that is, I could turn my camera on, sorry, that I knew Brian Vike up in Houston, British Columbia, the Vike Report, did a great weekly report on UFO stuff up in northern Canada. And he had contacted me through, I forget the actual mechanism, but anyway, he said, will you tell that story? That needs to be told. I said, yeah, I guess it should before I take the dirt nap. Anyway, I went on the air with him, and then he put me on, because he was doing a regular show with Jeff Rentz. I went on Jeff. We were supposed to do an hour. I ended up doing 3 hours. And one thing I promised him is I would make copies and send a copy FedEx out to the National UFO Reporting Center. Peter Davenport, I would send a copy to Jeff, and I would send a copy to Brian. So I had a photocopy of this page out of the book. I had documentation, I was with the Clovis Composite Squadron, New Mexico Wing Public Affairs Officer for Civil Air Patrol, blah, blah, blah. Sent all three to him, FedEx. To this day, none of them ever received it. So I took the receipts to FedEx, which is usually pretty squared away, and never got an answer. And this particular scenario parallels what Mark Leone had the same thing happen to him. They said, this isn't one of our numbers on any of these three parcels. We don't know where you got this from, but it's obviously bogus. In other words, like I was faking this about these three. I was a valid receipt, paid cash back then. Never received it. So you got to wonder about that. And it goes on beyond that, but they never received these photos. Now, my copies that I used during, and I'll see if I can find it. I think this guy, and I don't know who this guy is. Here's a picture of the front gate at Cannon. This gives you an idea where it is in eastern New Mexico, right over by the Texas border.
Roswell is down there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's 96 miles. I used to work as the anchorman at the late night anchorman at 11 o'clock news at the CBS affiliate in Roswell, and then shoot back up here to Clovis to do the 1 to 6. That's how come I ended up being on the air overnight on the weekends. I definitely was a nutcase in college, working around the clock, especially on weekends. So you can see this is the line of demarcation between Texas and New Mexico. This is Roosevelt County, and so they had level N police, Lubbock police, all the Texas Rangers, Texas Highway Patrol, New Mexico State Police. There were numerous reports of this. It was on the CBS affiliate and the ABC affiliate and the NBC affiliate up in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Las Vegas carried it. Denver carried it. So it was a big story. So it's not like it was hidden, never brought to light, but it never got any more traction after, a week or two. Let me see if I could find some more corroborating information for you folks. So here are, this is the Clovis News Journal. which was the number one paper. Talks about him. Scott Price was up on the roof with me and John Evilsizer. But what happened even further after that, about 10 years ago, is just too complicated and long a story to tell you folks now. But I want to see if I think this guy actually got a copy of the picture from Brian Veit's site, put it on there. Because, it looks like every other phony UFO picture you've ever seen. I'm as tough on myself as I am on everybody else. Oh, there we are up on the roof. I don't know who took that picture. I think I did because I wasn't in it. Yeah, there wasn't any such thing as selfies back in the days with 35 millimeter. Just trying. I think he had the actual photo. There's another. Let's see if I can find. There's another description that I think Brian posted or somebody else. So I'm open to questions.
Okay, who would like to comment or ask a question?
Yeah, fire away.
All right, let's see. How does this relate? How do you think it might relate to something like the lights, the Lubbock lights? You think there's any tie-in between the military installation there, or perhaps Roswell with the Lubbock lights?
Yeah, in I guess they were in 52. The Lubbock lights were very well documented. Here's an interesting sidebar. One of the guys that I knew very well, actually was in the dorm. I was the dorm president of Lincoln Hall. He went into the Air Force right out of. I was in Army ROTC. He went from Army over to the Air Force, joined, and flew F-111s out of Cannon. And as a matter of fact, his aircraft is on a pedestal at the entrance to town. It's called the City of Portales. And I went for this alumni reunion and homecoming in 97, the 50th anniversary of Roswell, ironically. And he was there. We had dinner one night, and he said, we were talking about the whole, the cannon flap. He goes, yeah, I remember you were on the news and everything. But he said, it's interesting. He said, I don't care anymore. I'm retired. But they had nukes out there they had tactical nukes at Cannon, and they were testing them they're doing all kinds of, because it was a fighter bomber. I mean, that thing it was 44 tons when it was fully loaded. The thing was unbelievable. It was a lot bigger plane than it looked like. It was not a fighter. But they were testing all kinds of ordnance out in the test range. And he said, yeah, there were live nukes out there when we were in college. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, they didn't say anything. And he also told me that 111th Technical Fighter Wing, 111 TFW, was slated to be the squadron that was supposed to go to Rendlesham and then was supposed to engage, was scheduled, they found out afterwards, in that flight against Gaddafi to Libya, where they killed his kid. They were not rotated out to that for some reason, and he didn't know why. And of course, I didn't know anything about this. But I think if you, Joe, back to your question, there's certainly a preeminence, whether you talk to Robert Salas or any of these other incidents, and there is that overriding theory that perhaps 45 was when we got everybody's attention in the universe, when we started popping off nukes, that maybe their interest centered around the fact that we had nuclear weapons that could do a lot more damage than we could ever imagine. I don't know, but that's at least a plausible possible scenario. And it's never been disclosed that there were nukes at Cannon, as I don't think it's been officially disclosed in violation of treaties that there were nukes in the weapons storage area. I mean, I spoke to John Burroughs several times, and he said, no, nobody has officially said that they were over there in England, because that was a violation.
They never acknowledge storage of nuclear weapons anyplace.
Thank you.
That's government policy.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're kept out of New Zealand all these years, because we had nuclear reactors and all the rest of that. But so, Joe, I don't know if there's a correlation. But what I can tell you as the Reader's Digest version, and Joe's heard this story in detail, when I went public with Brian and Jeff. I was at that time working for Fox Sports. And this was early days of cell phones. I had a separate cell phone issued by Fox Sports. And because I was getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning to do these broadcasts, I was sleeping in one of the guest rooms in this stupidly large house we had. I got a call about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's on the Fox Sports cell phone. It's like, Jesus, who's calling me? I mean, that it's not, we don't have an eminent broadcast. And it was some joker on there who just started right in with this nonsense, like a B movie. Um, who is this? It came up with all stars, if I remember correctly, or so there was no number on it. It was a flip phone. That's how old it was. And he said, we'd like to advise you need to stop talking about the incident in Clovis. I said, who is this? What is it? I thought it was a joke from one of the guys I worked with or something. Well, it wasn't a joke, and it went on and went on and went on. And it was so pathetic and so childish and so obscenely threatening. He gave me the same nonsense that I personally interviewed Frankie Rowe down there, and this is how I got involved in
Hey,
that.
Bruce,
Yeah.
can I cut in here for a second?
Of course.
Mildred Grant had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I
go
wanted to
ahead.
give her a shot to
Sure.
speak. Mildred, go ahead. Even though you put your hand down.
I'm sorry.
No problem, Bruce.
I wanted to know if Bruce Pearson knows anything about Antarctica.
What I know about Antarctica is what I have spoken at length with Linda Moulton Howe about. And she has done a lot of first-person interviews with people involved. I can tell you as a researcher, the following things are a little odd about Antarctica. First of all, the treaty that prohibits any travel or any stations on most of the continent has not been adequately explained to my knowledge and my belief. Secondly, this atmospheric observation station over the center of Antarctica, which is a no-go zone for anybody, in which the crew chief on this C-130 that went and did a emergency retrieval of some scientists, and they flew over that because it was the most expedient way to go. They were all debriefed and sent scattering to bases all over the world from that. That's kind of bizarre when they were on a humanitarian mission for somebody that had a medical issue. But I think the most interesting question, which it's a rhetorical question, but it's not, and I don't have the dates and the years, but go back and look at, and it was when Obama was in, how come all the world leaders went to Antarctica? And it wasn't touted as being a climate change or, environmental summit or anything. They all showed up down in Antarctica, including
the Pope.
Yeah, the head of the Greek Orthodox Church, the Pope, John Kerry, Obama, Merkel, I think, was in at that time. I forget who it was, but all these world leaders, and nobody even came up with a good cover story. They kind of just ignored it. So if there was a good reason, if it was treaty related, then what was that all about? I would only ask that there may be a very good reason for it, but they didn't even try to give you a good spin on the cover story. As lame as it was, and what got me into this area I have a degree in broadcast journalism, is I was working at that silly job. It was a shtick down there because it was the first commercial news job I got. I was 21 years old. I was late night weekend anchor at the CBS affiliate in Roswell, and nobody heard. I'm in the broadcast curriculum 6 miles up the road in Portales at Eastern New Mexico University. Nobody heard of Roswell. None of the books came out. Randall Schmidt, nobody had run into Jesse Marcel in Louisiana. So a guy approached me one night in the truck stop after the news, and some cowboy, and said, why don't you guys do a story about the flying saucer that crashed here? They didn't even call them UFOs in 75 when that was 76. And I thought he was just a drunk cowboy. He was well dressed, but and he got really angry at me. And he said, well, they told the whole world about it, and 2 days later, he told us all to shut up. And I was a 20-year-old kid from New Jersey. I said they told everybody to shut up. And that really set him off. And he said, and he gave me the whole litany about, it was the end of the war and we just whipped the Germans and the Japanese. And if you were told to shut up, you did. And the 509th was the only nuclear bomb group. I mean, everybody in Roswell, if they weren't in the dairy industry, worked at Walker Army Air Base, which is what it was called then, or had family members that did. And if they told you to shut up, you did. But more importantly, and I'm sorry to go so far afield, but all this stuff adds into the total picture. I met a guy, and I interviewed him on a cassette recorder because we didn't have any, there were no uh, remote cameras and kits like that. We were shooting film, and if it wasn't a major story with the PBS station, we were shooting it on high 8 if we got any camera, but generally it was take a cassette recorder from Radio Shack. But I interviewed this guy who was in his 60s at that point, if I remember correctly, who was a kid cleaning up in high school at the AM station when this all went down. And he was back in the studio when these guys came in, the guy was funny. He goes, I knew they weren't normal people because it's the middle of July in New Mexico, and these dudes show up in a black car, no air conditioning, and they're wearing black trench coats. He said they must have been dying. So they came in and they told the station owner they didn't know he was in there cleaning up in the recording studio, and he didn't say anything. But they grilled the guy for an hour, and they basically said you'll lose your station, you'll lose your means of income, your investment, and you'll end up in the desert. Nobody will ever find you. So they threatened him, and then he said, and this is where the guy broke down. He said, and then the station manager called me in. And he spent 2 hours screaming at me to put the fear of God in me because he said, you say anything to your friends or your family, he said, they're going to kill us all. You hurt them. And this guy was in tears, as was Frankie Rowe when I interviewed her. Glenn Dennis was a defiant SOB when I interviewed him. He was pissed at the way he was treated when he went over to because he got 2 or 3 phone calls after the incident. The first one, they wanted to know, this is the base hospital call, and wanted to know how many children's caskets he had. And he said, what is this, a joke? Would you have a school bus get run over out there or what? He said, no, how many do you have? Just answer the question. He said, well, I may have one. We don't keep them in stock. We don't use them very often. So then they called him back a couple hours later and wanted to know how long bodies would remain intact if they were packed in ice and not formaldehyde. And so he said, how many bodies do you have? And the guy said, you don't need to know any of that. So he got in the car and drove over to the base hospital. And that's where he theoretically ran into this nurse, this mysterious nurse. So when he told me that story, he was one tough guy. He didn't pull any punches. He didn't care who he offended. So that's what got me involved in it. I'm sorry to get off track.
No problem. Okay, basically, I think at this point, why don't we open it up a little bit? It's about 8 o'clock now, so we wanted everybody to maybe give a thought on something that is bothering them or that they would like to have some feedback on.
Joe?
Relating to anything paranormal and keep it brief, and we'll have a roundtable discussion on it.
Joe?
Yes.
I put into chat, if you can go to chat, or I can probably go to, a screen view of the airplane. It was a Fairchild 24 that best matches the plane I saw flying along I-95 and over the shoulder. And it had no wheels on it. It was that body with the tail and the wings and the struts, and it had no propeller up front. And when I found that match, a Fairchild 24, which was in service between 1932 and 1947, said, man, they haven't updated their look-alike planes and aircraft since Roswell. So they're still flying around those ancient planes.
Okay. Yeah, that's mysteries upon mysteries upon mysteries.
But I doubt that any of you that are listening here has ever seen anything like that flying around, right?
Not that I can think of. Anybody else? Let's go right down the line. Beth Esch, have you seen anything?
Oh, no.
Mindy, how about you? Have you seen anything?
Hello, Mindy.
I know you're there someplace.
I put her to sleep.
Okay, when she comes back, we'll get her. Mildred Grant, what about you? Have you seen anything interesting, such as Bruce Cornett just described?
Not at all.
Okay, Kathy, you're out there. How you doing, Kathy?
No,
That's about 100 years old. That those planes were in service. You know, you could buy one.
Okay, Bruce Pearson, briefly want to respond to Bruce Cornett?
Uh, what I saw here's a another picture that I think Scotty Price took, and you could see that there are a number of them in a circle. It almost looked like a square dance. They'd spin around in this circle, and then one would fly off and hover, and then all of a sudden they all dart over there, and there was many patterns, but they were visible for hours doing this. But so to
Oh,
answer Bruce's question, no,
have
I
you
mean
ever
there's
seen any of the pictures of the Westchester boomerang that flew
yes.
over the Hudson Valley?
Yes, I have. Well, and
And
that whole Hudson Valley flap that went on for a couple of years over the thruway and stuff was
right,
pretty much fine. I mean, there was dozens of cars pulling over. Thousands of people saw that stuff.
exactly. Well, Ellen Crystal, on her way to meet us in 1993, was met by a craft over Route 17, well, actually over the New York Thruway, and then followed her. And finally, it stopped over just west of Chester, New York, and she got out with her camcorder and got 12 minutes of it rotating in place. And it looks a lot like the picture you have there. Now, other pictures that I have seen people capturing the Westchester boomerang look almost identical to that picture that you're showing.
You know, the anyway, the there is, I think, the CIA has pretty much and DARPA and these other agencies have used UFOs as a screen for um, hiding highly sophisticated aircraft testing. And I think there's a case to be made that trillions, literally trillions of dollars that's been spent on black budget is not buying overpriced toilet seats and wrenches for the Air Force. And so I think there's a reasonable argument to be made that some of this may have been very highly advanced uh, experimental aircraft. I mean, there were articles in the public press about anti-gravitic travel being developed by the Air Force in the 50s, and then it all just went away. Um,
I have to agree with you, Bruce, because are you familiar with Michael Schratt?
yes, absolutely. I listened to an interview with him yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it was on KGRA or UNX, one of
Well,
them.
he's pushing the B-2 prototype that was flying over in the 1980s over the Hudson Valley, and in '97, a MUFON group that I was part of went out to the area, and we actually videotaped and photographed that prototype boomerang craft coming in for a landing at Stewart Airport. Beautiful pictures. I have a whole web page with showing it, and it's quite spectacular. And there's no doubt that that's exactly what it was, but it was not the Westchester boomerang, which I'm trying to find a picture of it to put on the in the chat of what Ellen Crystal photographed.
Well, there is a group of military researchers. A guy goes by Commander Cobra. He's an ex-Coast Guard and then contract pilot. He does his own show that he feels there's probably a possibility that the Tic Tacs were what they call blue on blue, a blue on blue event, which means that they were highly experimental advanced aircraft that were sent up against our own people to see how we would react, how successful we would be, what took place. You
I've
know,
heard that.
it's possible. I mean, I think you can't dismiss it out of hand, although we don't have any corroborating evidence. But, a couple $1 trillion by over a period of 30, 40, 50 years buys a lot of intense, deep research in so many areas. It's hard to imagine. They used to tell us that when I first started in broadcasting 50 years ago, that what you saw on the street was 25 years behind what they had in the development in the military off the books. So now they're saying it's 50 years ahead. So and we're 120 years into flying, for Pete's sake. So you can see how much is advanced, even though society hasn't, but how much technology has advanced in 100 years. It's not hard to believe that there's stuff that as I don't know, what was it? Carl Sagan said that, stuff that advanced looks like magic because you can't even imagine that it's happening. So who knows? I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, and as a pilot, as you all know, it's very hard for anybody to discern what they're seeing in the air, any aircraft, especially, people that aren't familiar with it. It should be easy to pull navigation lights, and figure out well, I'll give you an example, Joe. I mean, you were over there in Jersey. How many pictures did you see on the news where they were talking about the drones? There was a state police Sikorsky helicopter. It had, nav lights on it, red and green nav lights, and a white strobe flashing. But you can't blame the general public for not realizing that. So what I'm saying is, to be fair to everyone, under the best of conditions, it's very hard to figure out what you're looking at in the air at night. So
I agree with you. We'll take a look in the chat. I just put an animated GIF there of the Westchester Boomerang over Route 17 in New York. And this is from Ellen Crystal's video. And you watch it going through, and it's just hovering and rotating in place.
That's what these things are doing. They were rotating. Like I said, it looked like an airborne square dance.
Right.
But the speed at which they executed. I mean, there's no propulsion plant that could accelerate like that.
I totally agree.
No airframe, no pilot could take it. I mean, it's just silly.
Also, the B-2 prototype that Michael Schratt gave a talk on in Connecticut about 5-10 years ago, that aircraft cannot hover in place. It has wings and it has normal propulsion. And we saw it coming in for a landing. And we even had somebody with tuned into the air control tower there at Stewart. And we heard the pilot say, "Could you please turn up the runway lights nice and bright," as he was coming in. And then the traffic controller said, "Yes, we've just turned them up." And the pilot said, "Thank you." And as he comes down for a landing. So no question about it. But as I said, the biggest thing, difference between the ETVs and the ARVs is that the ARVs can't hover. The ETVs can.
Okay, just as a little change of pace, why don't we anybody have any comments about anything of the paranormal that they would like to just throw out to get feedback from, the other folks? All questions are welcome and all answers are welcome as well. So who wants to start?
Well, what is that, Joe, in the backdrop? You got a submarine diving?
That is the K-129, the Soviet era submarine, ballistic missile submarine that sank in 16,000 feet of water, not too far from French frigate shoals. And there's a lot of mystery to it as to how it sank, why it sank, and where it sank. I don't know if anybody's ever heard the story of the K-129. The CIA actually put out a video, a very slick video of the whole story. It was called Project Azorian. That came out in about 1975, I guess. And it was because the New York Times broke the story about Howard Hughes building a ship called the Glomar Explorer that was used to recover this the Soviet submarine. Now, why would you spend over $1 billion to recover a relatively old submarine that was being turned over to the Chinese communists around that time? Now, 1968, there were 4 submarines that were lost. There was the K-129, the U.S. Scorpion, the United States submarine Scorpion. There was a French submarine that disappeared within 35 miles of its home port. And there was also an Israeli submarine that was sunk supposedly by an Egyptian warship. So it was a bad year to be a submariner. In 1968 was not a great year. But the interesting thing about the K-129 and the mystery of it is that this is a boomer. Okay, they used to spend their duty station was right off the coast of Oregon, and they, just like our ballistic missile submarines, they'd stay out for several months and they come back to be in port for several months doing training. And what happened was that the sub came back to port after its last patrol, and it was going to be turned over to the Chicoms. It would have been the 4th ship of the line, and the last of them would have been turned over to the Chinese communists. Now, the interesting thing about 1968 is the Chinese communists were fighting against the Russians on their common border. It was a pretty bloody battle that they were fighting, yet here these submarines are being turned over at the same time. So what happened was that the sub came back, and instead of being in port for several months and being turned over, it left on a secret mission, and it left with an additional 10 men on board. Now, a diesel submarine is a very, very limited space. It's designed, the crew that it is designed to carry, it shouldn't have more people than that. Supplies, sleeping space, and so on. But it left with an additional 10 men, and nobody knew who these 10 people were. And the submarine, when it left port on these orders, it disappeared. And the Soviets had no idea where it disappeared. Now, instead of going back to a duty station or some other place, it made a beeline towards Hawaii. And where it ended up sinking was 1,000 miles from Honolulu. Now, the speculation was the submarine may have gone rogue. Now, submarines will go rogue for one of 2 reasons. One, they want to defect, like the Hunt for Red October, or they may start World War III. Now, this submarine, where it sank, being 1,000 miles from Honolulu, the 1,000 miles was also the range of the ballistic missiles that it carried in its conning tower. There were 3 missiles there. They were all nuclear. And the sub being diesel, it sank. And then the speculation was what caused it to sink. Now, it sank in exactly 16,000 feet of water. There was a cover story that was made back in 1968. It actually came out in Popular Mechanics or Popular Science magazine. And it talked about Howard Hughes wanted to build a ship, a very unique ship, that would mine manganese nodules off the ocean floor in 16,000 feet of water. So he designed and built the Glomar Explorer. And now the interesting thing from my perspective was that in 1970, I had just come back from Vietnam on my ship, and we were in port and we were getting ready to go out on an Ocean Station Victor patrol. But before we left, about a week or so before we left, this big weird ship tied up in front of my ship in Honolulu Harbor at the Coast Guard base, Sand Island. And we were getting ready to go on Liberty over to Honolulu. So we would have caught a Liberty launch that would have taken us over, and we would have gone to Waikiki and did whatever we were going to do. But the coxswain of that boat said, would you guys mind if we took a little detour? He wanted to take a look at this big, brand spanking new weird ship. So we said, no, go ahead, because we wanted to know what it was too. So we sailed down the port side of it. Beautiful ship, beautiful condition. A couple guys hanging over the side. We got to the rear of the ship, and the coxswain was swinging the boat in a circle, and we noticed the name on the back of it. It said Glomar Explorer. So I said,
Whoa.
oh, it's a mining ship. They're going to be mining manganese nodules off the Pacific Ocean floor. Didn't think anything more of it. Now we came back about a week later. We go out on Ocean Station Victor patrol. We're on patrol, and there was a weird day at sea. I mean, a totally weird day at sea. There were these walls, mountainous walls of fog, and they were like sheer drop, like a cliff faces. But there were these things all over the ocean. They were scattered around the ocean. So we were sitting there, and combat information squawked the bridge and said, hey, we're picking up a large target, and it looks like small targets are coming off of it. And so they gave us a range and a bearing, and so we're all looking, trying to see what this is. And all of a sudden, out of this wall of fog comes a bow. First, a bow spirit, the point of the bow. Then more of the ship emerges from the cloud bank, and then finally a large radome shows up, and then another radome, then finally a third radome. Now the ship is fully out of this, and it's 2,000 yards away from us, and it stops dead in the water. So we're trying to communicate with it. We're trying to contact it by ship-to-ship radio. Also working flashing light, trying to get them to answer flashing light, just to communicate. They totally ignored us. They stayed dead in the water about 2,000 yards away, and they shut down all their radiating equipment. Now, this is a gigantic Russian spy ship. They call it a range ship because they use it for their ballistic missile tests as well. So we're sitting there, and the captain says, okay, let's shut down all of our equipment. So we shut down everything that radiated, radar, everything that was turned off. And we were sitting there listening with our electronic countermeasure equipment. And this went on for about 2 or 3 hours and nothing. So finally, the captain said, this is crazy. We're going to get run over by one of these super tankers. They're on autopilot. They would run us over. They wouldn't even know they hit us by the time they passed us. So we put our radars back on. We started transmitting again. We kept trying to raise them with flashing light as well as ship-to-shore, ship-to-ship radio. Nothing. Then all of a sudden, combat comes up with another radar contact astern of us, a smaller contact. And this thing comes out of another one of these weird fog banks. And sure enough, it's an all-black submarine. So we get on the light, we're flashing light, we're trying to get its attention, trying to get it to communicate. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, they came back with flashing light. They said, November Yankee Echo Sierra, NYES. I said, well, if it's NYET, that would be Russian for no, right? So it turns out it was an American submarine that was playing cat and mouse with this Russian spy ship. But the question was, why was this Russian spy ship paying any attention to Ocean Station Victor? We were nothing but a navigation aid. We had a doctor on board for search and rescue and so on. There was nothing military about Ocean Station Victor. But why were they sitting there watching us? It turns out years later, the Russians had no idea where their submarine sank in 1968. The U.S. Navy knew exactly where it was, at least within 5 miles, because they have this secret underwater listening devices, and they were able to triangulate from the noise of the submarine when it was being crushed. As it got deeper, when it was sinking, it crushed, and you can hear it for hundreds and hundreds of miles away. So they knew exactly where it was. So the CIA, this is now its conjecture, they wanted to know why it sank where it did and what its mission was. So they concocted this cover story of mining manganese nodules off the ocean floor, and they built Howard Hughes and Lockheed Martin built this Glomar Explorer, and it has a big false bottom on it, and it had a lifting device that they could sink down, drop it down to the ocean floor, grab the submarine, and hoist it all the way up secretly and put it into the bottom of the ship. Now, that is a cool thing, especially We didn't have GPS back in those days. There was a whole bunch of technological problems that they had to overcome in order to recover something from 16,000 feet deep. So they brought up, they went down, and when they were actually sinking the recovery arm, there was a Russian ship almost right alongside of them that had no idea what they were doing. They thought they were actually mining for manganese nodules, but they were actually at the point of recovering that Russian submarine. So the Russians wave and they go away, and the rest is history. So when they brought up the submarine, they started to bring up about 2/3 of it. But then one of the arms on the device broke, and it dropped half of what they were bringing up. So they ended up getting a couple of nuclear torpedoes and maybe some code books. But that's an awful lot of money to spend to try to get something that they could have gotten basically with human intelligence just as easily. So the story really is what caused the submarine to sink. Now, there was a movie made not too long ago, and it had David Duchovny and also Harris, two good actors. And they played the roles of, one was a Russian or Ukrainian captain of the submarine. The other one was the head of a KGB unit. Okay, the 10 men were KGB. And the story had it that the KGB took command of the submarine after it left its port, and they forced it to go towards Hawaii, where they were going to launch a nuclear missile at Honolulu. In order to start a false flag, it was a false flag attack that would cause the United States to go to war with China, and they would fight each other, and the Soviets would be sitting on the sideline waiting to see how it all turned out. Now, there's probably a lot of truth to that. It is not a bad premise that they built, because what would happen would be a nuclear submarine with nuclear missiles submarine. It would take the two key approach to change the programming of the missile, so the targeting of it, and then it would also take a very special code that would be sent via a burst command from headquarters for them to actually launch the missile as an attack. The thought is that they were able to commandeer the submarine, hold the captain and the executive officer at gunpoint, and then what they would do is they would both have a key to the safe, and they would take out the instructions and the codes so that they could change the programming of the missile. So instead of being aimed at Portland, Oregon, it could now be aimed at Honolulu, Hawaii. So that they could do. But what happened was when they ordered them to launch the missile 1,000 miles from Honolulu, if you don't have the right launch codes, it causes the missile to self-destruct. If it self-destructs in its tube, that will cause the submarine to sink. It will cause a massive fire and the submarine will sink. And that's exactly what they believe happened, because one of the first things they did, they checked to see if there was radiation on the bottom. If there was radiation, they would know that something else was taking place that caused the submarine to sink where it sank. Sink and sank, whatever. So it's a strong argument that is in fact the case. The final takeaway on this was that after the fall of the Soviet Union, you had glasnost and perestroika. So what happened was the U.S., a high delegation from the Department of Defense, met with their counterparts in now the Russian Union, the Russian Confederation. And they were talking about a whole raft of things. The KGB files were being opened up at the time, and that information was being shared. The takeaway from the meeting between the Navy components, the Russian and the U.S. Navy, was they would never speak of the K-129 or the Scorpion again. The Scorpion was probably sunk by a Russian torpedo because it was shadowing a Russian mission or training session in the Mediterranean. This is an interesting story, and it's a mystery, and there's probably one of 88 separate and distinct opportunities of starting World War III.
But is there a UFO tie? I'm not following.
No. The UFO aspect of this is actually, what happened, I was quoted in a book. Tim Beckley did this to me. He took that story and he added a UFO component. And that's not what I said. The UFO aspect is a different story. But that particular story ended up going into the book, and it was blamed on the sinking of the submarine was blamed on a UFO. And that was not the case, at least not to my knowledge. So, yeah.
Very good, Joe.
Oh,
Interesting story.
yeah.
I just put a video of the boomerang, the prototype, in chat. Anybody who wants to go in there and click on play, they'll be able to see the boomerang ship craft landing at Stewart Airport. So it's quite amazing.
If you want to see the range of, speaking of that, we had early opened the show about other events. Just go to this page where I was talking about, I did find my report, but go to the archives of the Vike report, Brian Vike. It should give you an idea how many things are out there that really haven't been. Now, or 99% of these are explainable or unverifiable, that's fine. But I don't think all of them are fake or explainable.
These are alleged UFO sightings.
These are his reports, just like Peter Davenport collects, and he does. Let's just take one here. Let's find something here. Here's a catalog. He worked with Jeff all the time. They are in depth. They are not 3-line reports. It was very diligent in his. So if you want to do some research, folks, this will make your eyes bleed because there are a lot of them. And of course, Jeff Rentz has been in the forefront of that for 25 years.
This is Brian of Vike, you say?
Yeah, Vike, the Vike report from Houston, British Columbia.
Wow.
So if you want to look around at stuff, there's plenty to research.
Thank you.
Any questions about that? No. Okay. Who's got what? Anything else? It's now 8:28, so we have a couple of minutes yet.
Well, we had a sighting of a disc-shaped, saucer-shaped craft over El Paso. A lady snapped 2 pictures of it, and it was very interesting because it was sort of on edge, and it had a plasma ore on the bottom and the top, and it had this colored band around the rim, and on the left side there was a green light, on the right side there was a yellow light. But she did get that picture. I saw the pictures. Quite fascinating. That we've had one sighting here over El Paso within the last month.
Any backstory on that, or?
No, just that Joe Lewis has had the pictures, and he brought them to the UAP meeting, and he showed them to us. But he wouldn't let anybody take a photograph of his pictures. Too bad. It'd be nice.
Oh, he wouldn't let anybody take photographs?
Pictures of his, because he wanted to keep his source anonymous.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay, how about Roundtown? One last comment from everybody. Gloria Morrow, starting with you.
Okay, just a brief thing since you were talking about submarines and not being at the place that they were supposed to be. There's a book called The Shadow Divers. I don't know.
Yes,
if
I've read that. I've read that. Yes.
Yeah, it's a dive boat out of Riel or Belmar, I'm not sure, many years ago, and they go diving and they find a submarine, and it goes on with these men just spending so much time. 2 of them died.
Yeah.
Trying to find out exactly what submarine
what
this was.
That was a true story.
It was a German submarine.
Right.
Right off of New York Harbor. Yep.
And they went in and got parts of it and returned them to the families of the sailors that were aboard that.
Right,
Yeah.
the captain did. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story because I think it was in 180 feet of water. It went down.
Right. Was at the extreme level of,
Yeah,
nitrogen narcosis. And that's why
Right,
several
but
people died.
the destination of the submarine was nowhere where it landed up. So that's why they couldn't identify it for a long time, until they found something in the submarine itself.
that
And that they determined that it went down because of a circle torpedo that was fired, and it went around in a circle and came back and hit their own ship.
hit their own.
Wow.
Because
Interesting.
the conning tower was knocked off of it when it went down. And so the conning tower was lying to the side of the actual submarine.
Yep. Yep. Okay, very, very good, Gloria. How about
Thank
you?
you,
What do you
Gloria.
got?
And why do they call it the shadow dive?
I don't know, but
Remember? Because
yeah.
the fishermen, that's what they would do on their, fish finder. They would look for pools of
Oh,
fish, and they would be
oh,
hovering around wrecks on the bottom.
oh, the depth finder, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
well, fish finder.
fish finder.
Oh,
Similar, but not exactly the same.
But
oh,
that's how
okay.
they
So
found it.
it would actually show the shape of the fish. You're saying it would actually.
Well, it would be just a cluster of fish that were unexplainable, and usually the fish would congregate around some sort of structure on the bottom where other animals were that they fed on would be located. So,
And then I think the captain took some artifacts and they stored them in his garage. And I guess one was
oh yeah, the emergency oxygen.
and it blew up. It blew up
Yep.
his garage.
Yes, all the porcelain that he had gotten from other wrecks was destroyed too.
Oh.
Interesting. A lot of wrecks out there. There's thousands of them off the Jersey coast. Probably a couple of submarines too.
Yeah, he had thought he had gotten a find by finding that oxygen breather for escape, and not realizing that the surface of it was corroding, and it corroded just a little bit too much, and boom.
Right.
Yeah, I'm looking out the window right now at the ocean and thinking about what could be underneath all that. You just think it's the waves and who knows what's under there.
Oh yeah, yeah. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do the depths of our own ocean.
Well, how about the recent discovery underneath the Arctic shelf of ice that they found of a mosasaur egg lying on the bottom? That animal died 66 million years ago, but its egg was still there on the bottom. They recovered it.
Yeah,
So now they're going to clone them and have.
Who knows? Who knows?
they can. They're trying to
But
clone
you
everything
have
else.
no idea what's going to happen.
Well, a full-grown mosasaur would make Tyrannosaurus Rex look like a baby.
Uh-huh. But
Right.
some weird demented fellow with the right knowledge, you'd never know what they might do.
Right.
Well, they're now trying to create a chickensaurus.
Tough guy.
Well, peck you to
Because
death.
chickens come from dinosaurs. In fact, in the embryological development of it, and I studied this in college, at the very early stages of the chicken embryo, it has teeth in its mouth and it has a long tail.
Okay. Thanks. With that, let's end the chickens. Okay, Beth, what do you got, Beth? Come on, you got something.
No, I don't, but thanks for having me tonight. Maybe next
Thank you for
month.
joining us, Beth.
I'm actually going to be in Jersey next month, so I'll come and visit.
Okay. All right. Keep in
Wow.
touch then. Okay,
still
Mindy,
there,
what do you
Mindy?
got?
Oh, she's falling asleep.
Here we go. Hey, Mindy, what do you got?
Just thanks everybody. I always to everybody, and I'm gonna keep my ears open for what's going on in Antarctica.
Yes.
Okay.
Mosasaur
Okay,
eggs.
you can
Right.
report. You can report at the next meeting. Okay, who else? Kathy? Kathy, are you there?
Yeah, have a great night. Thanks. Next time.
Okay. Who did I miss? Mildred.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in the Antarctic.
Good. Then you have a homework assignment too. You're going to have to do some studying,
Yeah,
and you're going to
yeah.
have to share what you find.
Do you know what they found on the bottom of the Ross Sea around Antarctica? Tropical plants
Oh,
that
yeah.
exist.
Well, the actually the Earth shifted, and
No, no,
part of
not
the
really.
Antarctic was
The
above
way
the.
the way the Earth turns is what the problem is, not the way the continents shifted, because the Antarctica never shifted, never moved. It's just that the Earth rotated during an ice age on its orbital axis, and that changes everything. So you don't have any seasons during an ice age, only during an interglacial.
Right, but those tropical plants that they found fossilized or whatever, those would not have grown below the Arctic Circle at any point, with or
No,
without.
no, but if the Earth was tilted in such a way that the South Pole was pointed in the direction of the sun and the North Pole was pointed away from the sun, the North Pole would freeze solid with a huge ice cap, which is what you had, and the South Pole would become a tropical paradise where the sun rarely set, and that's what the ancient Egyptians have recorded. Nobody wants to believe it.
But
That during
what can we
I
look
just saw
forward
a TV show the other day where it said that Antarctica used to be all flora and fauna, and then it became the ice cap.
Well, it's the ice cap that is there now only developed since the end of the last ice age.
Whatever.
Whatever.
to? Okay, Bruce, what do you got?
I think I've said enough for tonight.
Well,
You want to look into what's going on, a very, very well researched and 16-year research project. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org. Watch the documentary The Dimming. Listen to the weekly broadcast by Dane Whittington, a very intelligent, well-researched producer. It'll scare the hell out of you, to be honest with you. And it's all real and documented. Geoengineeringwatch.org. He does a weekly radio show and has been doing it for 15 years. And it's so well documented that,
What's being documented?
Okay.
pardon me?
What's being documented?
What is being done with global climate manipulation, both through aerosol sprays and by HARP, and it's been going on since, at least in earnest, since the Vietnam War. Go look up Operation.
I totally believe that.
Well,
you could go look at now.
Right now.
We are in climate collapse, and he documents it now. The mainstream press is starting to, this weather whiplash. I could go on for hours because I have interviewed him several times, and he is a well documented researcher. He is not an extremist, but for 15 years he's been documenting this.
What's the premise?
That they're screwing around with the weather, and they have been since.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at Battlefront 2025, which was released by the Air Force in 1980, it said that one of the strategic initiatives is to control the weather on the battlefield by 2025. As a matter of fact, he opens his radio show, and in The Dimming, he has a commencement speech by none other than Lyndon Baines Johnson, where he says, we're developing weather satellite. This is 1963. We're developing weather satellites, which will be able to determine the world cloud cover and thereby determine the weather. And he who controls the weather controls the world. This is Johnson in 63. You can go look at the patents there's 16 patents now for the hydrolyzed aerosol sprays. The primary ingredient is
And they're
aluminum.
using them all right here. Yep.
Pardon? Yeah.
Right,
Brondium, strontium, thorium, surfactants. Now they've put graphene in them, which is electromagnetically sensitive.
Yep,
along
graphene
with
oxide.
exactly 5G towers all over the place. You can look at the traces of the NexRad radar, the super high power radar that was firing in a line off the satellite feed. He's not making this up. During the storm that wiped out Swannanoa and Asheville and prevented the storm from passing on, just kept pushing it over Buncombe County and Old Fort in that area, which caused it to dump the rain. Some other facts, insurers are now pulling out of the home insurance market or setting up um, special codicils in homeowners policies that will not, listen to this, will not cover damage due to hail because these monster hailstorms of hail the size of golf balls and grapefruit are destroying property all over to an extent that makes the rain damage and tornadoes look like a joke. So they're pulling out of the markets all over Oklahoma and so on. Go look that up.
Oh, same with Los Angeles. They pulled out of the market in Los Angeles already too.
So, you don't have, look, I had 2 years of meteorology. It doesn't give me the claim to fame to be an expert, but I flew balloons professionally for 24 years. I've been a pilot for 50 years. And Joe and I know if you're a sailor, you learn to watch the weather. You do not have 70 or 80 degree temperature variations within 200 miles of each other. That is just not normal. And you have, when I was in college, I never heard the term a high pressure dome. Now it's used all the time, where you have a high pressure system that will sit over the upper Midwest for 4 weeks and just cook it. Coriolis effects, the rotation of the earth, that's not how normal weather systems prevail. But go look up HARP. I believe in 1979 introduced the Department of Energy with the University of Alaska, world's largest microwave antenna system. There are now 8 of these systems, I believe is the number, around the world. Its stated design was to heat the ionosphere with microwave radiation and steer the jet stream.
Jet
So-
stream too.
So Camp Mystic was flooded by a weather anomaly created by man. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not
Yeah, well,
making any assertions,
that weather modification. I mean, even Brennan, the head of the
Yeah.
CIA under Obama, he came out about 6 months ago and said, "Yeah, we're controlling the weather." But there's more to it than that. A lot of the chemtrails that you would be seeing, like out west, you see them all the time, especially over the desert areas and everything. They've been actually experimenting with biological spraying as well. So
Can I say something?
sure.
During the Texas flooding a week and a half ago or so,
Mhm.
Will Kane from Fox News had on a CEO of a company that does cloud seeding,
Yeah.
and they were being accused of doing the seeding right near where the floods were.
Right.
And he explained that he wouldn't have lasted that long even if they
No.
did the seeding.
Yeah, he did it, I think, about a week or two before, and it would have dissipated and would have been.
Traditional cloud seeding uses silver iodine sprayed out of
Yeah.
basically look like sparklers off the bat. This is estimated between 10 and 40 million tons of this stuff in the upper atmosphere. You can see, and it's interesting, you can see the crosshatch pattern that when you watch up in the sky, I've seen it here, where it's not contrails. The modern jet engines are not like the old jet engines. They are high bypass turbofan engines. 90% of the air that goes through a jet engine today is not used for combustion. It's a big fan. Clearly, there is the ability to have a contrail, but after about 60 seconds, those crystals then dissipate and disappear. In a chemtrail situation, they spread out for 5, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and all of a sudden you get a gray overcast, which is exactly what it's designed to do, what the patents say. Spreads out like an aluminum blanket at 40,000 feet and reflects the sun's radiation.
Cooling
Unfortunately,
off the atmosphere.
Yeah, so go look at it. Draw your own conclusions. I don't tell people what to believe, but go watch the dimming. That'll give you an overview of it, and it is real. And by the way, we're drinking all that aluminum that's precipitating out and going into the groundwater. So drink up.
Okay, now for the good news ending. It's good. It's supposed to be a nice warm day tomorrow.
Yeah, 95
You
degrees.
should enjoy it.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the
Thank you,
information.
everybody.
It was
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for
Good meeting.
participating.
Thanks for putting up with me. Sorry for the trouble with Zoom.
No problem, Bruce. Bruce and Bruce, you guys,
Okay.
thanks. Mindy, good seeing you. Gloria, keep
Okay.
your eye on that ocean.
okay. Take care.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bill,
Bye.
you too.
Have a good night,
Night,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye. Thanks,
Thank you.
Joe. Thanks.
Good night now.
Night.